Tom looked down at me with a smug grin on his face. From today, this house is mine. You'd better think about your next move. As he said that, he spread his arms wide, looking around the spacious room with an elated expression as if he might spin around at any moment. The place we were in was my family home. My father was a wealthy man, and he was very particular about his house. The house that he had painstakingly built was worth $3 million. My father left this precious house to me and passed away just a few days ago. Yet, here was my husband, claiming the house I inherited as his own. Could it be that he thinks the inheritance I received also belongs to him? As I was about to explain that he had no such rights, my husband confidently showed me something. I'm not just making this up. This is the proof. What he held in his hand was, "My name is Emily, and I'm 38 years old. I work as a bank clerk at an online bank. I chose this profession because I believe my parents taught me the importance and the dangers of money. Both of my parents were serious investors. Growing up in a wealthy family, I was strictly educated about money from a young age. Money is precious. You must protect it yourself." That was one of my father's favorite sayings. Just because there was money in our house didn't mean that I could have anything I wanted. I felt I lived a life similar to that of a typical family. My allowance was slightly less than my friends, and we never dined in fancy restaurants. I attended a local public elementary school instead of a private one, given it was our local area. It didn't take long for word to spread about my family's wealth and our connections. "Emily's family is really rich, right? Must be nice. I bet you can buy anything you want. Do you always have the latest games? Let me come over and play sometime." In reality, I couldn't get everything I wanted, and I didn't have any expensive items, but that became the common narrative. Honestly, it didn't feel good. I believed I was living just like everyone else. In the higher grades of elementary school, my friend Catherine came to me with a problem, and I accidentally broke Karen's game, and now I have to pay for it. But I don't have the money. "Emily, can you lend me some? Catherine had just become my classmate this year. Haven't you talked to your parents about it?" And I can't tell them. They would get mad. "You're the only one I can confide in about this." I wondered if it would become awkward at school if I refused, but I was always told not to lend money. "Sorry, I don't have it to lend." She looked at me and left with tears in her eyes. The next day, I was called by Karen from the next class. "I heard you ignored Catherine when she asked to borrow money. Your family's rich, but you won't help a friend. Catherine said she can't compensate, so you should pay on her behalf." Why did it come to this when I had nothing to do with it? However, I persisted that I couldn't give what I didn't have. And there's no way you don't have money when you come from a rich family. Why are you lying about not having it? In the end, you care more about money than Catherine. You're abandoning her. So cruel. With that, she left. From that day, unpleasant rumors about me started to circulate. Karen and Catherine began to spread all sorts of nonsense, claiming I had swindled money from them and refused to compensate for a broken game console. The teachers quickly became aware of the situation and reprimanded them. But this only added fuel to the fire. Their slander became more and more extreme, spreading everywhere. Eventually, it reached my parents' ears, and my father had to come to the elementary school. Things escalated to a discussion between the parents pretty quickly. Since then, having received only superficial apologies from them, I haven't interacted with Karen and Catherine, They sometimes just look my way and whisper with sneering smiles, but they never spoke to me directly. During dinner, my father smiled in a troubled manner. "Emily, next time someone asks you to lend them money, tell them your father forbids it. You don't have to say whether you have the money or not. If they still persist, tell them, even though it's forbidden. I'll consult and see if something can be worked out." I was fed up with money-related troubles. I nodded firmly to my father's words. I didn't discuss money afterward and was careful not to invite friends over after enrolling in a new school. I chose friends who understood me well. Even as an adult, I was careful to avoid financial troubles and immersed myself in work to avoid unnecessary inquiries. At 28, I was introduced to my now husband, Tom, by one of my few friends. From the first meeting, he looked at me squarely and was an open and honest person. He was a year younger than me, but he looked about 5 years younger. I was drawn to the straightforward and cheerful Tom, and we married 2 years later. We had a grand wedding ceremony. My parents, worried because I hadn't shown interest in men even after 25, were always anxious about whether I would ever marry. They were overjoyed when I did marry, and they insisted on a lavish ceremony. "If it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, let's have a grand celebration." Your parents are also saying the same. About a month after the ceremony, my father suggested, "Isn't it about time you brought Tom to our house?" I trusted Tom, but I was cautious. His loose lips could reveal something about my family and cost troubles, reminiscent of my elementary school days. However, since we were already married, I decided to introduce him to my family. Seeing my family home, Tom was so astonished he couldn't move. "So Emily is this rich," he said with shining eyes as I showed him around. After leaving, Tom was inquiring all about my wealth on our way back. I brushed it off, saying I wasn't too aware of my family's financial details. But I had a bad premonition. "But actually, your father has been hospitalized." "What? Why? Is he okay?" I was so shocked I didn't know what to ask. "The doctors said they need to conduct more tests. Your father hasn't been feeling well lately. Remember, he hardly ate anything when you both visited. Indeed, my father didn't eat much that day and seemed to have lost weight. We will get the test results this weekend. Can you come too, Emily? Of course, I'll make arrangements to be there." I was genuinely worried about my father. Over the weekend, my mother and I went to the hospital to visit my father. Although he seemed well, there was a hint of weakness about him. When I spoke to him, he responded with a smile, saying only, "Sorry for making you worry. One can't beat age." A few minutes later, the doctor informed us of my father's condition. Apparently, he has pancreatic cancer, and it's stage 4. It has spread everywhere, making surgery impossible. I was at a loss for words, and my mother broke down crying. Why? He always took care of his health. My father remained silent while listening. Pancreatic cancer is often diagnosed late, as the pancreas is positioned in a way that it's hard to detect. By the time it's discovered, it's often too late. When we returned to his room, my father, looking resolute, spoke. "I'm sorry. I hope you to continue to live happily." Both my mother and I were overcome with tears. From that day, I visited my father at the hospital as often as time allowed. Due to a recent pandemic, visitations were limited to family members only. Father cherished his time with his friends, so he felt saddened by this restriction. Perhaps driven by this feeling, he seemed to wish for various people to visit our family home. Emily, after I'm gone, please take care of our house. Invite various people and give it meaning. That was his wish to me. How could I fulfill his wish? I thought hard and an idea came to me. I decided to look for a renovation contractor. Tom, concerned about me visiting my father every day on his days off, had been unsupportive ever since I mentioned the family house situation. How's your father's health? It doesn't seem very good. It must be tough on you alone. I'll help take care of your father, too. His words were kind. Balancing work and hospital visits was not easy, so I appreciated Tom's support. But his next words changed my feelings towards him instantly. He's Emily's husband. I have to think about the future, too. I'd like to know about your father's assets and all. It's not my money to talk about. My father manages the family finances, and if something were to happen to him, my mother would take over. I retorted, money is important. I recently met a judicial scrivener named John who might offer advice. You never know how long your mother will be around. Better to discuss early. I felt like sighing at his insensitivity. Is money all he cares about? Past grievances came flooding back. My father has a trusted lawyer he's known for a long time, so we don't need introductions. But we have to sort out the money. It's important. That's why we'll ask someone trustworthy we've known for a long time. Thanks for the concern, but we're fine. From that day, Tom kept bringing up my father's finances, assuming he was already gone, which distanced me from him. A few months later, after a hard-fought battle, my father passed away. Following discussions with the family, I inherited the $3 million mansion. In accordance with my father's will, Tom didn't even try to hide his keen interest in the inheritance. Was the inheritance from your father progressing? I've heard that there are a lot of taxes on inheritances, so I can introduce someone who can advise us on how to minimize the waste. Despite telling him it wasn't necessary, he kept persistently bringing it up. Emily, you've inherited that big house? That's great. When can we move in? How did you know? I ran into your cousin at the funeral the other day and we chatted a bit, and it came up. I wish she wouldn't discuss such important matters so lightly. I felt angry at my cousin. I may have inherited it, but it's too big for just the two of us. We're not planning on living there. What? Why would you inherit a house you're not going to live in? We should move into that mansion. A happy life awaits us. It's already been decided by everyone. We won't live in that house. Pa, why do you decide everything without discussing it with me? I am your husband, right? I've explained to Tom numerous times that the inheritance won't become our shared property. But he doesn't seem to understand. But more importantly, I had a goal to fulfill my father's wish regarding that house. Perhaps feeling ignored, Tom started showing obvious hostility towards me after that. He attended my father's funeral, but he didn't help at all with the subsequent procedures. After the funeral, there was no time for the bereaved family to catch their breath. I was busy with inheritance procedures, memorial services, and visiting my father's friends. A month passed in the blink of an eye, then 2 months. Just when things seemed to have calmed down, I returned home to find Tom with a sinister smile on his face. Sit down. We need to talk. Wondering what was going on, I listened as he suddenly began to say this. I've changed the ownership of your family home to my name. Here's the proof. A document was placed on the table, labeled Ownership Change Report. I was stunned. Marrying you was a mistake. I didn't realize when we were dating how gloomy and lacking in communication skills you are. Even though your family is rich, your own income is low. You're truly useless. I thought having someone to do the housework would be good, but I can't continue with you. However, I'd hire you as a maid for that mansion. The pay is low, but you can live in the house your father left behind. What do you say? If you refuse, we'll divorce. I have no use for you anymore. Get out. And with that, he presented the divorce papers. What are you suddenly talking about? You changed the ownership. You can't just do that. I had it arranged by the judicial scrivener. What? Well, you'll regret it. I can't continue with you any longer. Let's divorce. Saying that, I signed the divorce papers, packed my things, and left the house. Money can change people so easily. I kept reminding myself of that as I headed towards my family home. The next day, I received a call from Tom. Give me the keys to your family home. It's mine now. Don't be ridiculous. It's not your house. It's the precious family home I inherited from my father. Saying that, I hung up the phone. He wasn't like this when we first met. Money can really change people's hearts. I was once again deeply feeling the terror of money. Now, what should I do next? As I took a moment to think, a loud alarm sounded, indicating that the home security system had been triggered. I heard a banging at the front door. Open the door, Emily. This is my house now. It seemed that the security system had activated because Tom was trying to forcefully enter the house. I don't know what you're talking about. This has always been our family's home. I shouted through the door. Stop joking. I've properly processed everything. Open it now. The sound of him trying to unlock the door and banging on it echoed loudly. I ignored him. Shortly after, a security guard arrived and restrained Tom. He's a stranger. Please take him away. What are you talking about? Didn't I show you the documents yesterday? With the help of a judicial scrivener, I've become the owner of this house. Without hesitating in front of the guard, Tom boasted. But I told him wait a moment and went inside to fetch some documents. Returning to the entrance, I showed Tom a copy of the official registry transcript. This house was definitely inherited by me, and I've properly completed the inheritance registration. This is the proof. Do you get it? Your so-called ownership change document is a fake. Tom was left dumbfounded. Just because someone is a judicial scrivener doesn't mean they can change the ownership without the owner's consent. The color drained from Tom's face. That can't be true. He told me. It had cost money. But he said he'd process it for his friend me. That's a judicial scrivener's job. Hey, is this person really your friend? How did you meet him? I couldn't help but ask. When he found out that your father was rich and I'd eventually get some of that money. He approached me. He told me he could help with inheritance taxes and advised me on how to distribute the inheritance. He's a very trustworthy person. And when you said you wouldn't live in this house even though you inherited it, I consulted him about it. He told me it'd be troublesome, but for $20,000, he could change the ownership to me, the husband. So I had him do it. As he spoke, Tom's face looked like he was on the verge of tears. He took out his phone from his pocket and began to call. Carmen, please answer. He kept redialing over and over again. This can't be happening. Why isn't John answering? Didn't you think to research the inheritance registration process or market prices before asking? You spent $20,000 on a worthless piece of paper. You're such a fool. That John person is just a scam artist. You openly talked about money and got completely conned by someone who came to you. Tom, I thought you weren't a bad person, but you were completely corrupted by money. Goodbye." As I tried to close the door, Tom desperately pleaded, "Wait, Emily, I was wrong. I want to start over with you. Please, take back the divorce. Isn't this a bit too convenient for you? Security, please take him away." Tom was escorted out by the security. Later, I strengthened the security at my family home and changed our contact details, including mine and my mother's. Tom visited a few times but stopped after being repeatedly turned away by security. 3 months later, amidst the chirping of cicadas, a memorial service for my father was held at the temple he had frequented, and there was a familiar face. It was Tom, who looked utterly emaciated. I wasn't surprised seeing him like this. I knew how he had been living these past months. I had heard about Tom's current situation from a mutual friend. Tom, wishing to reconcile with me, had lied to his boss about work appointments to search for me for hours on end. Eventually, his company caught on, and he faced warnings, demotions, pay cuts, and eventually termination. Furthermore, the all-too-trusting Tom had been scammed multiple times over these 3 months. He was lured with false promises of reconciliation with me, losing money each time. A genuine friend had warned him, but Tom had instead believed the sweet-talking scammers. As a result, he had amassed a huge debt and had been abandoned even by friends and family. The Tom standing before me now had lost everything. His income, his family, everything. His clothing was ragged, and he looked out of place at a memorial service. Before I could call security, Tom suddenly prostrated himself in front of me. "Emily, I'm truly sorry." Tom raised his voice, pressing his forehead to the ground as he apologized. Naturally, this drew attention, and the surrounding people looked at me. "Stop. This isn't good timing. Today is an important day for my father," I said in as quiet a voice as possible to Tom. I wanted to get through her father's memorial service without any incidents. I thought that was her way of showing respect to her father. I didn't want to disrupt such an important occasion. However, Tom didn't consider my feelings at all and kept bowing and apologizing. "I truly regret it. I only have you now." He started crying out loudly. His loud cries drew the attention of the relatives who were watching. "What's going on? Is everything okay? Did Emily do something? What is this man doing?" Various voices could be heard from around. I hated it. It seemed that today's focus would shift from my father to me. Enough is enough. It's my father's memorial service. When will you stop bothering me? Please, security. Please help. He's stalking me. The security guards rushed over and grabbed Tom. "Emily, Emily." He kept shouting my name as he was taken away. I apologized to those around me. "I'm sorry for causing a disturbance during my father's memorial service." After that, the memorial service continued without any issues. I went to the police that day to discuss Tom's behavior. I was ready to file a complaint if anything happened. I also moved out of my family home to cut ties with Tom completely. Actually, I had been planning to move for a while. The move went smoothly since I had already chosen the new place. Later, a friend updated me about Tom's situation. Tom kept visiting my family home and was devastated when he saw the renovations. He was still clinging to the hope of our married life and becoming wealthy. However, he saw Quito on a news program. Quito, the judicial scrivener who had deceived him, was arrested for fraud. Realizing that those who do wrong get punished, Tom regained his composure. Now he has found a meaningful job. As for me, I had a plan to convert my family home into a vacation rental. The renovation went smoothly. Now, the former mansion is operated as a rental villa with my mother. The last time Tom saw the house, it was already a rental villa. The rental villa business is doing very well. I spend fulfilling days working with my mother. Dad, this is what you would have wanted, right? Every time we have guests, I talk to my Father in heaven. I'm glad I could fulfill my father's wish. I got the chocolate cake for you, Emily. You like chocolate, right? Mom, if you eat that you'll die. Catherine quickly switched the cake between Tom and me. Hesitantly, I took a bite of the cake. Catherine began to eat her cake as well, as Tom proudly spoke about how he had reserved this cake a month in advance, and how delicious the crushed cookies on top were. He suddenly began to choke. Tom's face turned red in an instant. He seemed to have difficulty breathing, began frothing at the mouth and shaking, and then collapsed to the floor. My name is Emily. I'm 36 years old and work for a food inspection company. I live with my husband, who is 2 years older than me, and our 7-year-old daughter, Catherine. I met Tom, my husband, in a college club. We began dating after we both started working, and we got married 2 years later. Catherine was born the year after we got married. Catherine's development was slow, and she only started walking at the age of 2. We were deeply concerned and took her to many hospitals, but they found no abnormalities. Every hospital said, "There are individual differences, let's see how it goes." At first, Tom was very worried, but he lost interest in Catherine when she didn't start talking or walking. Karen, my mother-in-law, deemed Catherine as a disabled child and detested her, never holding her. Only my father-in-law cared for Catherine, always smiling at her and saying that she was a unique and good child. I was very grateful for that. Before our marriage, Tom was very kind, but after Catherine was born, he was always irritable at home. When something displeased him, he would slam the table, stomp the floor, and generally make loud noises. Every time he did that, I would tense up and shrink back. Tom's behavior at home stressed me out, leading to menstrual irregularities and then menopause, making me unable to have more children. I covered myself with the futon and cried a lot. After that, Tom became even more hostile towards me, nitpicking my cleaning, cooking, and even the way I folded laundry. Every time he complained, he would make a loud noise by slamming the table or setting down his bowl roughly, so I would just apologize in fear. However, Catherine would watch Tom's rough behavior with a curious expression, and never seemed to be scared or cry. Tom would look at her as if she was something eerie. Catherine may not speak, but she learned to read very early on and was always engrossed in books. By the time she was in the older class at nursery school, she was into books with illustrations and texts suitable for children, and I believe she understood some Latin. When it was time for Catherine to go to elementary school, she was recommended for a support class because of her lack of speaking. When I consulted Tom about this, he became furious. "Are you kidding me? Why does my child need a support class?" Tom slammed a cup onto the table. I could only shrink back in fear. "Anyway, you figure it out. I won't accept such a disgraceful thing." Stomping heavily, Tom headed towards the bedroom. As I was holding my head in despair, Catherine rubbed my back with her small hand. "Thank you. Crying, I hugged Catherine. Catherine, you've done nothing wrong. The next day, I received a call from Karen. Do you intend to send my grandchild to such a class? If the neighbors find out, I'll be too embarrassed to walk outside. If that happens, it's all your fault. Karen said what she wanted to say and hung up. Tom and Karen weren't really concerned about Catherine. They only cared about how they were perceived by others. After consulting with various local advisors, school teachers, and government officials of the city, Catherine was allowed to attend a regular class instead of a support class. Everyone in the support class, from the students to the parents and the teachers, were kind-hearted. I thought the support class suited Catherine better. I could tell by looking that Tom and Karen would strongly oppose the idea of me suggesting Catherine go to the support class, so I couldn't bring it up. When Catherine started attending elementary school and I had some free time, the company where I used to work part-time approached me about full-time employment. The job was enjoyable and fulfilling. Compared to the stifling environment at home, it felt good to be needed and relied upon. I decided to consult with Tom about it. As expected, he hesitated. The company I'm with has offered me a full-time position. I really want to work full-time if possible. Tom crossed his arms in a condescending manner. You better take care of the house just like you've been doing, or even better. But I'll need your help with some things. Tom widened his eyes and banged the table. Housework is the wife's job, isn't it? It's absurd to ask me for help. After thinking for a moment, Tom smirked. Fine, I'll ask my mom to handle things at home. I was shocked. I couldn't believe the disagreeable Karen would come to our house. In the end, Tom gave a spare key to Karen, and she started visiting our house almost every day. Whenever Karen came over, she'd be full of snide remarks. This place is a mess. Poor Tom. How were you raised to clean like this? I started being even more careful with my housework since Karen began visiting. Yet she always found something to complain about, nitpicking at everything. I endured this bullying for a few weeks, but eventually couldn't take it anymore and told Karen that she didn't need to visit since I'd handle things. Reluctantly, Karen agreed and stopped coming. However, just when I thought things had settled down, Tom started frequently staying at his parents' house. Tom always loved his childhood home and visited often, but now it became even more frequent. Some time later, as Catherine was entering her second year of elementary school, my father-in-law, who was always healthy and the only one kind to Catherine, suddenly passed away. At the funeral, what puzzled me was seeing Tom and Karen occasionally glancing at each other and laughing. Weren't they sad? While I never really felt that the father-in-law and Karen were close, seeing the bereaved laugh during the funeral felt out of place. With my father-in-law gone, there was no one left to support Catherine. I was filled with anxiety. Having juggled housework, childcare, and my job caught up with me, and I fell ill with a fever. I called Tom, who had been spending most of his time at his parents' house, to ask if he could help with meals, but he curtly refused. Even when my mother was ill, she never asked my father to do anything. I don't want to catch what you have. I'll be staying at my parents' house for a while. After saying this, Tom hung up and didn't return home for a week. As my health improved and work became busier, I was offered a promotion. The company wanted to appoint me as a department head. While the offer made me happy, I was also aware of the increased responsibilities at home. I consulted Tom, but as expected, he insisted I maintain my housework duties. Moreover, he looked at me with a mocking expression. Do you really think you can handle a role like department head? That title would put you on par with me. Tom abruptly left the table and went to the bedroom. The next day, Karen visited our house again. Tom mentioned it. He said the house is a mess because you're not focused on housework. Karen quickly entered the house and started to check everything around. From the way the window glass was wiped, to the way the laundry was folded, to the water stains in the bathroom. I was made to redo all of them. Often, when Karen came over and started to complain to me, Catherine began to speak to Karen. Catherine approached Karen with a serious look on her face. Emily, what do you think are the 4 major elements of happiness? What do you mean by happiness hormones? Taken aback by Catherine's rapid-fire questions, Karen looked puzzled. Perhaps Karen hadn't heard Catherine's voice in a while. Oh dear, you can speak normally. Answer my previous question. Karen tilted her head, possibly not understanding the question at all. Oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphin. Karen looked even more confused and anxiously looked at me. These are neurotransmitters, mainly secreted from the pituitary gland in the brain. Lately, Catherine had been reading a lot of medical books. Karen listened to Catherine's explanation, completely astounded. Catherine continued to passionately discuss the relationship between neurotransmitters and illnesses, as well as substances related to sleep. Overwhelmed by Catherine's focus, Karen finally went home exhausted. Thankfully, that day went by without any nagging. On my birthday, Tom, returning from a business trip, bought a birthday cake. This was the first time I received something from Tom since we got married, even though he always gave souvenirs to Karen during his business trips and gifted her with designer scarves, wallets, and bags on her birthdays. He never bought anything for Catherine and me. I was shocked and couldn't fathom Tom's sudden gesture. As I stood there, stunned, Tom held up the cake box to show me. Thank you for everything. I love you. I'll put this in the fridge for now. Let's eat it later. Tom's cheesy words gave me goosebumps. Catherine, seemingly displeased about something, took a bottle of mineral water from the fridge, glanced at the cake, and went to her room. Catherine remained in her room, so Tom and I had dinner together. Throughout the meal, Tom kept showering me with these cheesy compliments. I'm sorry for always leaving the household chores to you. From now on, I'll help out a bit too. Okay, thank you. Though I found Tom's words creepy, I didn't want to upset him, so I just played along. As I was clearing the dishes after dinner, Tom took the cake box out of the fridge. When I was about to get plates and a knife ready, Tom insisted I sit down. It's okay, I'll handle it. Tom sliced the cake and brought it to the table. Honestly, I found Tom's actions creepy. I chose your favorite chocolate cake. You like chocolate, right? I'll go get Catherine. Wait a moment. I rushed to Catherine's room. Catherine seemed to be searching for something on the old computer I no longer used. Mom, you shouldn't eat that cake. What do you mean? Just trust me right now. Catherine looked at me with a desperate expression. I had never seen her so concerned before. I decided to trust Catherine. Catherine and I returned to the living room together. Shall we eat? Hey, there's no fork. Normally, I would head to the kitchen immediately, but I couldn't move because Catherine was tightly holding on to my clothes. Oh, I forgot. I'll get it now. Tom cheerfully left the table. Then, Catherine whispered to me, Mom, if you eat it, you'll die. Catherine quickly switched mine and Tom's cakes. Tom, holding a fork, returned and began to eat the cake in front of him. It's delicious. Emily should eat too. It's made by a famous pastry chef. Hesitantly, I started eating the cake. Catherine also began to eat her cake. As Tom proudly talked about how he reserved this cake a month ago, and how delicious the crushed cookies on top were, he suddenly began to suffer. Tom's face turned increasingly red, his breathing became labored. He started frothing at the mouth, shivering, and then collapsed on the floor. It seemed like an anaphylactic shock from an allergy. Both Tom and I have a peanuts allergy, so there's no way it could contain peanuts. Confused and rooted to the spot, Catherine spoke to me in a calm voice. Mom, call an ambulance. Catherine handed me her smartphone. Coming back to my senses, I called an ambulance. Catherine placed Tom on his side and asked me to strongly pat his back. As I did as I was told, Tom spat out the cake he had eaten. Then, it seemed like Tom's breathing eased a bit. Tom, appearing to be in and out of consciousness, was muttering peanuts, peanuts. Even inside the ambulance, he was muttering. So the paramedic asked me to stay by his side and keep looking up. I sat beside Tom as instructed. Tom, who received treatment at the hospital, managed to survive. Tom had to be hospitalized for several days as a precaution. How did Catherine know something life-threatening was about to happen? Filled with wonder, I completed the hospital procedures and returned home. As soon as I got home, Catherine showed me a snack bag she took out from the trash bin. Dad threw it in the kitchen trash bin. It was a packaging bag for cookies made with peanuts and flour. The cake box that Dad bought had a half-peeled sticker on it. Catherine saw an unfamiliar snack packaging in the kitchen trash, so she looked it up online. She discovered that the snack contained peanuts and warned me about it. I still can't believe that the crushed cookies on the cake were actually crumbled peanuts cookies. Recalling Catherine's warning, "Mom, if you eat it, you'll die," I trembled. If Catherine hadn't been alert, I would have been the one eating that cake. The mere thought of being in that hospital bed myself sent shivers down my spine. Did Tom actually try to take my life by tampering with the cake? I reached for my phone, preparing to make a call. I have to report this to the police right away. I think it's better if you don't. Why not? Dad was the one who collapsed. If you report it, the police might suspect you. My vision went black at Catherine's words. Indeed, what Catherine said made sense. Reporting to the police might just make me a prime suspect. I felt a wave of despair, wondering what I should do. "Mom, don't worry. I'll handle it." Catherine went to Tom's study to search for something. Tom had always told us to never enter his study, and I rarely ever did. Catherine opened a drawer and began flipping through a notebook. Dad is meticulous. He must have left some notes. Catherine stopped flipping and showed me the notebook. There was something shocking written in it. My father-in-law had also fallen victim in a similar manner. The notebook had entries like peanuts cookies, crush and pinch, and mix with sprinkles. Furthermore, Karen was also involved in this terrifying plot. The two were conspiring together. At the end of the page, it was written, "Next is Emily's birthday." I involuntarily gripped the notebook tightly. "It's okay." Catherine struggled to speak, addressing me. I realized at this moment that I was trembling more with anger than fear. To think they would target my life after my father-in-law. I vowed internally, I'll never forgive Tom and Karen. "Hey, this notebook can be evidence, right?" Catherine sadly, she shook her head. "Unfortunately, no. If they say it's just a written fantasy, then it's over. Besides, Grandpa's body is already buried. It's hard to investigate." I looked down, deep in thought. "You're right. Without concrete evidence, they can easily wriggle their way out." She squeezed my hand tightly. "I'll find the evidence. I promise to protect you, Mom. Let's send those two to prison." Catherine's words encouraged me. I nodded firmly and squeezed her hand back. "If they are up for it, we'll stand our ground." For Catherine's sake, I firmly resolved to protect my life and avenge my father-in-law. Catherine and I vowed to seek revenge against Tom and Karen. Catherine and I began preparations for our final confrontation. First, we had to lure Karen into our home. I want to cook something delicious for Tom when he gets discharged from the hospital. Can you teach me one of his favorite dishes? Without any suspicion, Karen came over. Although I disliked being with Karen even for a second, I endured and learned how to cook with her in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Catherine searched through Karen's bag and found the peanuts cookies. Catherine swiftly took just one cookie. The next day, I took the cookie to my company and requested a component analysis. I never thought that working at a food inspection company would come in handy at a time like this. A few days later, Tom was discharged from the hospital. I asked Karen to pick up Tom as I prepared a celebration meal for his recovery. Before Tom's arrival, Catherine and I prepared his favorite dishes and awaited the two. By the time we finished preparations, Tom and Karen returned. I made today's meal with Mom, after learning from Grandma. Tom happily sat down and began eating. Karen also seemed to enjoy her meal. After a while, a puzzled expression appeared on their faces. "Hey, Mom. Look at this." "No way." She dropped the piece of fried chicken she was holding, apparently too shocked to notice. Neither Tom nor Karen touched their food. "Is the seasoning okay?" I guess I couldn't match the taste of dishes made by my mother-in-law. Both mumbled something, looking down. This sprinkle not only tastes good, but also seems to boost vitality. My father-in-law once told me about it. Tom and Karen began shivering, possibly out of fear. "Catherine, sprinkle this on their rice for them." "Stop. Don't put that unknown thing on it." "Why are you so scared?" "I just want both of you to live long lives. After all, you put it on my cake, didn't you? In the end, you ate it yourself and got hospitalized." I showed them the papers. I had our company's inspectors analyze the contents. The substance on the cake and the one in the peanuts cookies matched. "What are you talking about?" "I don't know anything about that. The ingredients in the cookie you threw in our trash and the one Karen had are from the same product. How dare you go through someone's belongings? Besides, a friend gave me those cookies as a souvenir from a trip." I calmly placed the copied version of Tom's notebook on the table. "So, what does it mean where it says cookies purchased online here?" The notebook contained detailed entries like the manufacturer's name, product name, shipping date, and price. Tom and Karen's faces turned blush and then pale. "It also says here, if only a tiny amount is given, it won't be detected." I stared sternly at Karen. "This is related to your father-in-law's cause of death, isn't it?" Tom, looking deflated, began to speak. "Dad was getting in the way. Maybe he didn't like how close my mom and I were. He always had something to say, always interfering. He was so annoying. Yes, he constantly lectured Tom and me, saying things like you two are not right and that's not a normal parent-child relationship. I couldn't stand it. So, I mixed peanuts cookies in the seasoning and fed it to him." The father-in-law was only concerned about the abnormal relationship between his mollycoddled son and his overly attached wife. Probably, Tom and Karen misunderstood his intentions. Their reasons were utterly selfish. I felt immense pity for the father-in-law, who had lost his life trying to establish a healthier family environment. "Since it worked with your father-in-law, you tried the same method on me, right?" "Yes, you have the same peanuts allergy as me and Dad. You were also in the way." My anger turned into sheer disbelief. "What you did is a crime. I'm reporting you to the police and submitting the evidence." Suddenly, Tom stood up and grabbed the copy from the table. He rolled it up, shoved it in his mouth, and forced himself to swallow. Karen, Catherine, and I were shocked and stared at Tom. "Now the evidence is gone. The police will think it's just Emily's delusional story." Tom looked down at Catherine and me with a triumphant face. "Tom, that's just a copy. The original is somewhere else," Catherine said calmly. Then, she placed her smartphone on the table. "Now, you can't escape with any excuses." Catherine had planted the smartphone under the table and had been recording conversation by the apps from the start. "It's over then." Tom collapsed weakly into his chair. "And we were so close." Just a bit more and the nuisance would have been gone. Karen couldn't contain her anger and was banging the table with both hands. You two really thought you'd succeed with such a plan? Catherine said with an exasperated tone. No matter the plan, I will always protect Mom. I took out my smartphone. I'm contacting the police. Please admit your crimes and make proper amends. It's the least you can do for your father-in-law. As I tried to operate my smartphone, Tom and Karen began to grovel. Please, we apologize. Please spare us from the police. We're really sorry. Yes, we're so sorry. Please forgive us. Tom and Karen were rubbing their heads on the floor. Suddenly, Catherine began explaining various tactics of rebellion. Dad, you're a mollycoddled son who can't separate from his mom. So, a perfect crime is impossible for you. Firstly, you leave evidence too easily. If I were in your shoes, I quickly covered Catherine's mouth. Catherine, please use your knowledge properly. I looked into Catherine's eyes. Catherine met my gaze steadily. Okay, I understand. I'll avoid getting involved with such people. Also, I have something to report to Mom later. I hugged Catherine tightly. Okay, I understand. From now on, let's live peacefully, just the two of us. When the police were taking Tom and Karen away, the two were crying and screaming, giving the officers a hard time. Copies of the notebook, recorded voice, and the purchase history of peanuts left on Tom's computer became evidence, resulting in convictions, including for the stepfather's case. By the time Tom was prosecuted after the arrest, I had successfully divorced him. I received $20,000 each from Tom and Karen as compensation. Karen sold the family house to make the payments, since Tom had no income to pay child support. He sold the house we lived in to cover it. This left Tom and Karen with no place to go once released. I used part of the compensation to make a grave for my stepfather. I wanted to properly mourn him. After the verdict for Tom and Karen was issued, Catherine and I reported the incident in front of my stepfather's grave. I'm sure he must be pleased in heaven. After the incident, Catherine showed me a piece of paper. Thing I said I'd report is this. It was the result of an IQ test. I was surprised and looked at it twice. It says 135. My intelligence quotient is 135. I was surprised again. I believe those over 130 are called gifted. Sorry for taking the test without telling you, Mom. I also used your credit card without permission. I was surprised again that Catherine could do such a thing. Later, she transferred to a school that accepts gifted children. Catherine, still not good with communication and not talking to anyone, is enjoying a liking for the environment where she can study what she's interested in as much as she wants. I'm enjoying living with Catherine and find my work fulfilling. Thanks to a livelier life and improved complexion, people often say I look younger. Since we started living together, Catherine has been hugging me frequently. Doing this releases a lot of the happiness hormone, oxytocin. I still don't know where oxytocin comes from, but it certainly makes me feel happy. And happily, my menstrual cycle has returned. I wonder if it's thanks to what Catherine calls the happiness hormone. I'll continue to live without losing smiles with Catherine. It was the day when we went to a high-end French restaurant with 7 other moms. I have a reservation under the name Harris for 6 people. Emma, the leader of the moms, stated firmly. Then she looked at me with a malicious grin and said, "Thank you for reserving the seats for us. I've updated the number of people, so don't worry. You're not one of us. You can leave now." The other moms chuckled. I see. Enjoy your time. Saying that, I distanced myself from the elite mom group. Shortly after, a waiter approached me to chat, leaving the elite moms pale-faced. My name is Amelia Wilson. I'm a 42-year-old housewife. I live a modest but peaceful life in a quiet residential area with my same-aged husband and 17-year-old daughter. My husband, Jake, despite his demanding job, always ensures we have quality family time. He's the perfect husband. My daughter Margaret has been doing well in her studies and got admitted to a university through school recommendation. As it's her last year of high school, she's busy creating memories with friends. Finally, my child-rearing days were starting to wind down, allowing me more time with friends. One evening, my phone beeped with a rare notification from a WhatsApp group chat. It was a group that hadn't been active for nearly 5 years. Since our children are graduating next March, I thought we should have a party. The message was from Emma, the leading mom. Soon after, other members sent stamps of agreement, like understood and looking forward. I just watched the conversation without responding. The venue will be the renowned high-end French Bistro course. Amelia, you can be in charge this time, right? I haven't met these people privately for over 5 years. Before I could reply, the other moms unanimously agreed. Everyone's on board. Amelia, please handle it. It seems I was chosen as the organizer this time. Maybe it's time for me to settle things. I murmured to myself, picking up my phone. This all started about 10 years ago. We moved to this town due to my husband's job transfer. My daughter, Margaret, was in the 2nd grade of elementary school at the time. We had to choose a school for her. We ended up choosing a private affiliated elementary school closest to our home. After completing her enrollment procedures and ensuring she was settled in her class, I was walking alone inside the school. I then noticed a woman, who looked like a noble, talking with several teachers. It was more of her expressing her opinions, and the teachers seemed troubled by it. Passing by that spot was awkward, but taking a detour would be a long way around. So, I reluctantly tried to sneak past them unnoticed. Just as I was passing by, their conversation seemed to have just ended, and, with bad timing, I was addressed by the elegant lady. "Oh, you're a new face. Which student's parent are you?" "Ah, hello. My daughter, Margaret, just transferred into 2nd grade today." The lady looked me up and down, as if sizing me up, and with curious eyes, she inquired, "It's unusual for someone to transfer midterm to our school. Is there a particular reason?" I felt a pang of unease. Who on earth could she be? She was dressed too formally for a parent, yet seemed too unreserved towards other parents to be a teacher. "Excuse me, but are you a teacher at this school?" She replied. "Oh my, I forgot to introduce myself. It's been years since I've met someone who doesn't know me. I'm a parent just like you. Our kids seem to be in the same grade. I'm Emma, the mother of Samantha." To my surprise, she too was a parent. When I looked around, the teachers who were being scolded earlier had disappeared. I intuitively felt that perhaps she might be one of those so-called monster parents, and it would be better not to get too involved. This was my first encounter with Emma. I was working at the time and thought I wouldn't have to interact with her much. However, to my bad luck, Emma's daughter and mine were in the same class, so we ended up meeting during events. For some reason, I ended up joining Emma's circle of elite mom friends. I really didn't want to be involved, but I felt that if the parents fell out, it would affect our children. So, for Margaret's sake, I decided to associate with Emma and the others to a minimum extent. However, I felt completely isolated within the group, as their world seemed so different from mine. Many times, I thought of leaving the group, but they seemed interested in my outside world stories and often used them to one-up each other. It wasn't a pleasant experience, but I endured it for Margaret's sake. However, a minor incident caused a rift between me and the mom group. When our daughters were in 6th grade, I was called by the class teacher. Being summoned by the teacher usually implies something bad, so I was nervous. Though I believed my daughter couldn't have done anything wrong, I went to school with anxiety. I was led to the reception room, where the principal, vice principal, class teacher, and some prominent members were present. Thank you for coming on such short notice, despite your busy schedule. Did my daughter do something? No, not at all. Seeing my anxious look, the teachers laughed. The class teacher began. Sorry for startling you. We've called you today because we have a request for you. To summarize the school's request, they wanted me to plan the itinerary for this year's school trip. Every year, the destination for the school trip was the same, and there had been talk for a while about whether there were any new ideas. Apparently, Margaret presented in school that my profession was related to travel, and it seemed I was chosen for the task. While it was a great opportunity, I couldn't decide on my own. So, I decided to survey the students to determine the destination based on the budget and their preferences. As a result, Miami was chosen. In addition to my main job, I was frequently visiting the school to finalize the school trip plan. One day, I bumped into Emma at school. Hey Amelia, I just heard from the teachers. Is it true that you planned this school trip? Rather than saying I planned it, I took a survey from the students. The destination with the most votes was Miami, and it fit within the budget. It's based on the students' wishes, not my sole decision. I can't believe it. You know my daughter goes to a modeling academy, right? The UV rays in Miami in July are too strong. She'll get sunburned. Why would someone like you get to decide the destination for the school trip? Just because you work part-time at a travel agency doesn't mean you should get carried away. I was so shocked by her sudden outburst that I was at a loss for words. Before I realized, other moms from the celebrity mom group were behind Emma, looking at me with cold eyes. As I was trying to think of how to explain the situation, the teacher in charge and the deputy head teacher noticed the commotion and explained the situation to everyone. I'll hear more about this in the principal's office. And with that, Emma left with the deputy head teacher and the teacher in charge, leaving the other moms still giving me cold glares. Fortunately, I received a call from my workplace at that moment, allowing me to escape the situation. It seemed that the principal, deputy head teacher, and the teacher in charge managed to calm Emma down, and the students were able to go on their school trip without any issues. According to Margaret, Emma's daughter, Samantha, seemed to really enjoy Miami and was having the most fun. I hoped that seeing her daughter so happy would alleviate some of Emma's anger. And as expected, on the night the students returned from the trip, Emma posted on the WhatsApp group chat, "Thank you, Amelia, for planning such a wonderful trip for the children. I'm sorry for being so harsh on you." After that, other moms started posting their gratitude towards me. I remembered feeling relieved that they had finally come around. Later on, when our kids were about to move on to middle school, Emma posted on the group WhatsApp chat, suggesting a celebration trip with the kids. That sounds great. How about going to USH? We can rent a microbus. Everyone began to agree one after the other. Amelia, are you listening? It's your turn. Oh, yes, I am. USH sounds good. Then please handle the arrangements. You enjoy doing this kind of stuff, right? Wait, am I doing this alone? Can someone help me? Of course you're handling it alone. You even planned the school trip. You should be able to handle this easily. That time, it wasn't just me. My company was requested by the school, and the employees made the arrangements. I didn't do it alone. No one addressed my explanation, and Emma ended the chat saying, "Okay, please take care of it." With the travel date just 2 weeks away and considering it was spring vacation season, hotels were getting booked quickly. I asked the group for help again, but everyone just read my messages without replying, and every day, Emma would message asking for updates. While I wanted to cancel the trip altogether, I wasn't sure how the moms would react, and more importantly, my daughter was really looking forward to going to USH. So, even though I didn't want to use my company's resources for personal use, I had no choice and managed to make the arrangements. One thing that bothered me was that Emma insisted that the reservation be made under her name. Moreover, I was asked to pay up front and collect the money on the day of the trip. And thus, the unforgettable trip day arrived. On the day of the trip, when I arrived at the meeting place with my daughter, all the other members were already there. In a rush, I ran toward the bus, which seemed about to leave as it was already loaded with passengers. Why are there always people who gather right on the brink of time, now assembling a whole 30 minutes before the set time? I had a bad feeling. As I hurriedly tried to board the bus, Emma blocked the entrance, pointing at a sign on the bus and said, "Can't you see this?" The sign indicated a capacity of 15 people. The bus I had arranged was supposed to be a minibus with a 20-person capacity. This time, our group consisted of 7 moms and 7 kids, totaling 14 people. Considering the long journey from Seattle, I had arranged for 2 drivers. Thus, with 16 people in total, a bus with a capacity of 15 wouldn't suffice. If only you had taken your time and come closer to the meeting time, you wouldn't have gotten hurt. I moved the assembly time earlier without telling you because I didn't want to hurt you. You seem to have misunderstood something. Excuse me, what's going on? Where are our seats? Laughter could be heard from inside the bus. Looks like you really did misunderstand. Why did you think you and your group were going with us? This trip is just for the moms and kids. Were you even friends with us? But you asked me to make arrangements on the WhatsApp group chat, didn't you? Yes, we asked, but did anyone ever say that you were going to? Are you okay? Can you read English? Don't misunderstand. This is too much. What have I done to deserve this? When I protested to Emma, she rebuffed. Don't you understand your own mistakes? You exposed other people's children to the risk of skin cancer. You were the first to betray us. Emma had always held a grudge against me for organizing a school trip to Miami. Anyway, that's the situation. You're not coming with us. It's time to depart, so could you move? She pushed me aside, closed the bus door right in front of me, and the bus departed. My daughter, who was left behind with me, asked with tears in her eyes, "Mommy, what about Spider-Man? What about Harry Potter? Weren't we all going out together?" She seemed to understand that despite looking forward to the trip, we were not taken along. Seeing her beloved mother treated coldly by other adults must have been too much of a shock for my little girl. "I'm sorry, honey. We can't go with everyone today. We'll definitely go with Daddy next time." My daughter couldn't hold back her tears anymore and started crying. Holding back my own tears, I hailed a taxi and went home. My daughter, traumatized, started to stay indoors. I was so worried about her that my husband and I took turns taking time off work to be with her. 3 days later, I found an envelope in our mailbox. It contained cash and a half-eaten bag of snacks from USH. I didn't need to investigate to know who it was from. Judging from the amount of cash, it must be the travel expense. Pushing the half-eaten snack bag deep into the trash bin so my daughter wouldn't find it, I finally realized my hands were shaking. How far will these people go to torment someone? I can't forgive them for hurting not just me, but also my precious daughter. I decided to stop engaging and avoided checking the WhatsApp group chat at all. Time passed, and the WhatsApp group of former mom friends, which had been inactive, buzzed again after about 5 years. Just like that time, conversations were progressing without me. Scrolling back, it wasn't just me. Other former mom friends hadn't updated this WhatsApp group for a long time either. Apparently, a new group was created without me, and they had been communicating there. Despite that, the only reason they revived this group with me in it is evident. They probably intend to use me. Observing the posts on WhatsApp, before I knew it, lunch at a famous upscale French restaurant was set for next Wednesday. Of course, the arrangements were up to me. Isn't it a place you need to book in advance? I'm looking forward to it. I'll brag about it to my friends. Others kept posting similar comments. I briefly replied, looking forward to it, and closed WhatsApp. On the day of the lunch, I arrived at the restaurant at the agreed time, and the former mom friends were already there. Long time no see, Amelia. Did you make the reservation properly? Wasn't it hard to book? With Emma leading, the familiar former mom friends approached. Their expressions were the same as when they abandoned me and my daughter 5 years ago. They must be trying to deceive me again. Hello. It's been a while. Instead of talking here and causing a disturbance, why don't we go inside? Following Emma, the former mom friends entered the restaurant. Welcome. How many are you? Addressing Emma. Reservation for 6 under the name Amelia. She replied loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear. You mean Amelia? Please wait a moment. After confirming, the waiter went to the back, and the former mom friends started to giggle. By the way, Amelia, why are you here? Are you meeting someone? You don't think you're having a meal with us, do you? You're not our friend. Emma, still the same as she was 5 years ago. Of course not. I'm here for a different appointment. Hearing this, the former mom friends were silenced. What? An appointment? As Emma said this, a waiter came from the back and said, Miss Amelia, I apologize, but we only have a reservation for 4. That's impossible. I changed it to 6 last week. Emma started to panic. The other former mom friends began to murmur, confused. Miss Amelia, or should I say, Madam CEO. The ones you're waiting for are already here. Spotting me behind the former mom friends, the waiter approached. Thank you for waiting. Can you guide me to my table? As I was about to be guided, Emma grabbed my arm to stop me. Wait. What's going on? Why are you the only one being seated? Shouting at me. I apologize, but could you please lower your voice? You're disturbing other customers. I replied calmly. Emma and the former mom friends stood still, speechless. I made a reservation for 4. That's why we got seated. It's as simple as that. This is a reservation-only restaurant. Emma, you and your group made a reservation too, right? Against my calm statement, Emma's face contorted in anger as she argued. Didn't you reserve for 7 of us? You tricked us. Why should I reserve for you? I never said I'd reserve for everyone. Emma's face turned increasingly red. but you replied in the WhatsApp chat that you were looking forward to it. That was me imagining all of you having a good meal. I was saying I'm looking forward to that. I'm not your friend. I never intended to have lunch with you." Emma was completely at a loss for words. Then, a voice from behind, one of the old mommy friends, chimed in. "You were called CEO. What does that mean?" "I run companies related to travel and dining. This restaurant is one of the ones I manage. Today, I'm having lunch with my dear friends whom I reserved seats for in advance." As I said that, my kind-hearted friends in the back waved at me. I shouldn't keep my friends waiting, excuse me. I left the stunned former mommy friends and sat down with my real friends. I have good friends too. It's as simple as that. The affiliated elementary school our children attend has an escalator system up to high school. Starting from middle school, they can choose their curriculum and change buildings accordingly. My daughter, Margaret, loves reading and studying. Thanks to Emma and the others choosing the general curriculum, they've been separated since middle school. This was a huge relief. In this new environment, I met kind mommy friends and Margaret made good friends too. We've been enjoying peaceful days. That's why I came to have a meal with friends I can comfortably talk to today." During the meal, a waiter whispered in my ear, "Excuse me for interrupting your meal, but the lady you were with earlier is causing a commotion at the reception." I looked over and saw Emma acting childishly, yelling that she wouldn't be satisfied until she ate the course meal here. It seemed the other former mommy friends had left, leaving only Emma. "Please call the police, she's just an old acquaintance, so whatever happens is fine." I was able to watch Emma being taken away by the police. A few months later, after successfully finishing Margaret's university entrance ceremony, she moved to her dormitory. My husband and I enjoyed our long-awaited time alone. Even though my husband and I both run our own businesses, it's rare for our days off to align. Despite the busyness, we live fulfilling days. I was curious as to why Emma suddenly started bothering me again, so I did a little investigating. According to rumors, Emma desperately wanted her daughter to make a debut in the entertainment industry. To prevent injuries and sunburn, she apparently never let her play outside or participate in sports since she was young. As a result, her daughter mostly played indoors and eventually became a netizen, developing a nocturnal lifestyle and often skipping school. When she heard that my daughter got into a prestigious national university, she didn't seem to take it well. I can't believe that someone could be so selfish as a parent to make others uncomfortable because of their own ego. I hope Emma's daughter doesn't succumb to her mother's pressure and finds her own path in life.